Welcome to Defining Dad Bod, where my dad, Coach Alex Van Houten, plus his 14 years of experience to work for you. You should listen to him. Here's Pretty Beast Mode. Who knows who we could be if we could become 1% better every single day.
What's up, guys? This is Alex Van Houten with Defining Dad Bod. I hope you're doing super well. You're listening to Season 3, Episode 25 of Defining Dad Bod, where we're talking about 15 ways to make yourself harder to kill. I'm really excited about this episode today because it's a nice change of pace. Here at Defining Dad Bod, I'm very diligent as your host and publisher to make sure that we deep dive everything we do in scientific fashion and to try our best in the podcasting platform to answer your deepest questions before you even ask them. This episode, however, was sparked from a quick social media conversation I had where I asserted that it was important in this season, and given particular challenges we might face in the future, that folks take a serious responsibility in their own endeavor to make themselves harder to kill. And someone asked me, well, how do I do that? This was part of the list that came out. Now, each of these topics is worth a show or maybe several in and of themselves, but today I presented them as briefly and succinctly as possible, so that if something stands out to you, either you can explore some of the resources in the show notes, or you can reach out for help. Either way, I know that by listening to this episode, you'll walk away with one, if not several ways, that you can improve your daily habits in order to make yourself harder to kill. First, some housekeeping, and then some food for thought. If you've missed my previous announcements, we have unpublished our Patreon page for Defining Dad Bod. I don't like to be cloudy on specifics in this show, and so I recorded an entire podcast, episode 22, to walk you through the history, the present, and the future of what we're doing here at Defining Dad Bod. If you haven't checked that out already, I'd encourage you to do so. The short of it is, we've moved our online community operations outside of social media and our funding for the platform away from Patreon to a new place called Better Daily. Better Daily is a powerful virtual platform, very similar to Facebook, but not owned by the confusing advertising algorithms of big social media companies. Instead, they've allowed us to purchase that space and build that platform around our purposes so that we can grow a community of folks interested in becoming 1% better every single day. This is also the space for all of our previously paid-for resources like dietitian-written meal plans, healthy fridge art, workout programs, and our quarterly Faithful 40 challenge. If you want to join our new community, until January 1st, the cost is only $10 a month, and there's the opportunity to do an annual membership with 3 months free. After January 1st, the cost will go up, and though I'm not sure by how much yet, I can promise you it's never going to be $10 a month again. We'd love for you to be a founding member in this new endeavor in supporting the show and creating an awesome community space where folks can work hard to become 1% better every single day and appreciate the support of other people doing the same. The link's in the show notes below. We'd love to have you. And even if you're not much for the online community space, subscribing to this community is the best way to financially support Defining Dad Bod going forward. So click the link, connect to the group. I'm excited about what we'll be doing there as the year comes to a close and the new year gets underway. That's betterdaily.disciplemedia.com. We'll see you there. And now our food for thought today. Yesterday, I was a horrible grouch. I woke up from some cruddy dreams that didn't make any sense to me, and was also met by an ornery toddler who's not having a lot of fun cutting his 2-year molars. #dadlife. It was a very nose to the grindstone kind of day. I did my best not to take it out on anybody, but I can't say I was pleasant. In the afternoon, I had a project that I had on my to-do list that required a stud finder, and as I was walking into the back room, I had a funny thought. I put the stud finder on the wall, pressed the button, and called for my wife. "Hey, Kristen, check this out." She came around the corner from the kitchen, and while there was no stud under the stud finder, I turned it slowly toward me, gave her a funny look and a nod, and pressed it against my chest. Sure enough, beep! "Our stud finder's working," I said. She chuckled, shook her head, and walked away, and then Gabriel came over. It also turns out he's a stud. Bennett thought what we were doing looked like fun, and so he wanted me to press the stud finder against his chest too. "Stud, dada? Stud?" he said, and we all died laughing. Even Kristen from the kitchen, shaking her head at my dad joke, thought the whole thing was pretty funny. Your food for thought today is this. Oftentimes when you're a leader in your workplace, your household, and your community, You set the tone for everybody's mood. And while it's unrealistic to ask yourself to be in a great mood all the time, you can find little moments in the day not to take yourself so seriously. Let your hair down, have some fun, and try to put a smile on somebody's face. Even if you think you're funnier than you actually are, you might still get a chuckle, and everybody in your vicinity will appreciate the effort. Are you taking yourself too seriously? Are you not creating as many opportunities to laugh as you could? I know you've got a lot on your plate, but sometimes, like my mom used to say, situations are either laugh or cry. Your choice. Yesterday, with my stud finder, I chose to laugh, and I'm glad I did. Can you create a stud finder moment today? I'd love to hear how it goes. At CoachAl@definingdadbod.com. That's your food for thought today. I hope it gives you something to munch on. And now, without further ado, let's get to 15 ways that you can make yourself harder to kill. "15 ways that you can make yourself harder to kill." Here we go. Number 1, improve your cardiovascular fitness. Unfortunately, in the health and fitness world, cardio's gotten a bad rap as a repetitive movement that you have to do regularly in order to burn calories. However, an intelligent cardiovascular fitness program will strengthen your heart, your lungs, improve your mitochondrial density, improve your blood volume, and even strengthen your brain's ability to regenerate itself. You can find some resources in the show notes below to help you construct your cardiovascular program. But if you're interested in being harder to kill, start with your cardiovascular system. The number 2 way to make yourself harder to kill is mind your poop. Wait, what, Alex? You heard me. Every single day, or at least if things are working properly, your body gives you a quick report on the John about how things are looking on the inside. I'm not going to get into details here, but if things are abnormal in your digestive tract, it's not doing you any favors as far as your immune system, your digestive health, and your well-being is concerned. Digestive discomfort and irregularity is one of the very few tried and true messages that our body can send us that something's not right on the inside. It's not just an inconvenience. Stop ignoring it and do something about it. If you need some help, reach out at CoachAl@definingdadbod.com. You want to get harder to kill? Mind your poop. Number 3, increase your plant biodiversity in your diet. I know, biodiversity is a big word, but it's very simple. From a scientific perspective, individuals who exposed themselves in their diet to 30 or more plants every single week saw significantly decreased risk of chronic diseases and a significantly improved mortality rate. If you have the opportunity right now, pause this podcast and make a list of every plant that you've eaten this week. Beans, potatoes, lentils, okra, sweet potato, ginger, green tea, blueberries, hemp hearts, goji berries, spinach, carrots, cauliflower, broccoli, tomatoes, cantaloupe, turmeric, peppermint, and blackberries. That's my list as of Wednesday. I've still got about 10 more plants to expose myself to hit my 30 this week. Once upon a time I was told that I need 7 servings of veggies every single day in order to maximize my health. But new research through the American Gut Project is showing us that it's not so much about the amount of plants that we're consuming, but the biodiversity that improves the diversity of our gut flora. I've spoken about this elsewhere, so I'm not going to harp on it, but this is the number 3 thing that you can do to make yourself harder to kill. And if you need some help with ideas, look in our show notes for a link to the resources in the Better Daily group, where you'll find 12 weeks of dietitian-written meal plans to help you increase your plant biodiversity. The number 4 thing you can do to make yourself harder to kill is to get enough vitamin D. Vitamin D is a vitally important part of your metabolic and hormonal subsystems. Without it, your body's unable to do a lot of things efficiently. I've spent 40 minutes on the show diving into the science of vitamin D, and you can find that link in the show notes below if you're interested. For now, get sun exposure. And if you can't get sun exposure, like it's cold outside, or you live in a place with a very low UV index, or your neighbors are easily offended by half of your body being uncovered, then start supplementing. Getting enough vitamin D will make you harder to kill. The number 5 way to make yourself harder to kill is to get serious about your sleep. As with the previous 4 things I've said, we've got some resources in the show notes below to help you to dive into your sleep more effectively. But your body requires sleep in order to restore yourself physically and mentally. If your sleep is poor, disrupted, or currently pharmaceutically induced, then I promise you have opportunities within your sleep habits to make yourself harder to kill. It's been my experience when working with clients that the most important aspect of changing their quality and quantity of sleep is to alter the schedules of their day. It's hard to go to sleep if your kids aren't going to bed on time, and it's very difficult to ask your body to get into a restful slumber if you haven't taken the time and energy to decompress from your very stressful day before trying to shut down the system. Like I said, it can be pretty complicated for people, so I've done entire shows on it, and you'll find those links in the description below. But if you want to make yourself harder to kill, get serious about your sleep. Your number 6 tip for making yourself harder to kill is to invest in relationships. When was the last time you had a meaningful conversation with somebody you really cared about and who really cared about you? When was the last time you made space in your busy week to sow seeds in another human being and to allow them to sow seeds in you? Positive, productive relationships lower blood pressure, improve immunity, and increase longevity, and this is a scientific fact. However, for many of the folks that I've worked with in my time as a health coach and trainer, very few folks are investing intentional time and energy in improving their relationships. If you want to make yourself harder to kill, this is non-negotiable. The most hardy and resilient folks have at least a few people in their corner who they can depend on, who they can trust, and who they can have an honest conversation with, as the many obstacles that life throws our way requires that we don't do it alone. And the next thing you can do to make yourself harder to kill, number 7, is related. Do some cuddling. Wait, what? Yes, cuddling. Or more specifically, physical touch releases oxytocin in the brain, which lowers blood pressure. And if you don't have a decent human nearby that you're happy to cuddle or hug, then you'll be happy to know that animals can actually stand in this gap as well. Petting a dog releases oxytocin for both the person petting the dog and for the dog themselves. The same is true of cats. And you might also be interested to know that a hug that lasts 10 seconds lowers blood pressure much better than a hug that lasts 2 seconds. And while I consider myself a pretty physically affectionate human being, I will say that I actually have to count to 10 to make hugs last 10 seconds. And while it's not on the list, laughter also seems to be something that helps us to live a little longer and make us harder to kill. And I promise you'll get a good laugh out of hugging somebody for 10 seconds, who you would normally stop after 1. Hashtag true story. If you want to make yourself harder to kill, create opportunities for cuddling. The number 8 thing you can do to make yourself harder to kill is breath training. When was the last time you took a deep breath? Most of us don't breathe diaphragmatically, meaning we don't use our diaphragm to take a deep breath in and then to release that breath. You could check in on yourself and see if your belly's moving in and out when you breathe, and that's a quick indication of whether or not you're breathing diaphragmatically. But when was the last time you took 30 deep breaths? If you took 1 deep breath every 5 seconds, that would only take 150 seconds. But me even asking you that makes you think, gee, when in my day do I have time to take 30 breaths? Breath training is a powerful form of meditation, and breathing is actually one of the very few things that is under our subconscious control that we can bring under conscious control. Some other examples of subconsciously controlled things are heartbeat, digestive function, or the growing of fingernails and toenails. You don't have control over any of those things. But with a little thought, you can take control of your breathing, which means there's a powerful integration between your subconscious and conscious mind for the moments that you intentionally breathe. And some researchers believe that it's this connection that actually makes meditation one of the most powerful things that people can do with brief periods of their day. If you want to be harder to kill, adopt a breath practice. It doesn't take much time. It's free, and you'll feel the difference immediately. Don't believe me? Give it a shot. The number 9 thing you can do to make yourself harder to kill is grow some muscle. I know, you heard number 1, cardiovascular fitness, and you knew that I couldn't help myself to make sure that you lifted weights this year. True story. Every year after our prime, our body has a harder and harder time keeping the muscle tissue around that we had in our youth. In the exercise world, we call that lean body mass, and your amount of lean body mass is directly related to your longevity. If you want to make yourself harder to kill, boost your immune system, improve your hormone function, and generally live a life with less pain, then you need to take some time to intentionally grow muscle. The number 10 thing you can do to make yourself harder to kill is develop a taste for fish. One of the dieting fads that's been going around in the last 30 years is the quote-unquote Mediterranean diet, which is kind of fun since Mediterranean people wouldn't tell you they're on the Mediterranean diet. They're just eating the way their ancestors used to. One of the hallmarks of the Mediterranean diet, and one of the things that researchers believe make a difference in longevity and body composition, is the amount of omega-3s in the diet and the amount of protein versus saturated fats in the diet. Now, I'm not going to tell you that you need to go pescatarian or that beef's bad for you, but what I am going to say to you is that most of the people that I work with would benefit from working fish into their week. 1, 2, maybe even 3 times weekly, at lunch or dinner, or if you're really brave, breakfast. If you're not much for fish, start with less fishy fish, like flounder or mahi-mahi. But if you're ready to dive in head first, get those low mercury but high omega-3 fish, like mackerel, sardines, anchovies, and watch what happens to your body. And after a couple weeks of this, ask yourself if you feel harder to kill or not. According to the research on the Mediterranean diet, you definitely will be. The number 11 thing you can do to make yourself harder to kill is power training. Power training is the intentional work on type 2X muscle fibers that make your body more resilient to the force of gravity and unexpected shocks. We all trip going down the stairs sometimes, and who knows when you're going to need to jump over something. And while training your muscles and your joints to output good power might be helpful in a zombie apocalypse, all jokes aside, there have been research studies done that show that the functionality of type 2X muscle fibers is directly related to life independence, immune function, and overall quality of life. Jumping is not just a kid thing, and if you have 2 functioning legs, there are ways to train properly for it that could be good for you. If you want to make yourself harder to kill, incorporate some power training. We've got 4 more things we could do. Hang with me. The number 12 tip is to manage your inflammation. If you want to make yourself harder to kill, you have to ensure that your body's not killing itself from the inside out. Inflammation is actually a very important process in immune function and in restoration of the body's tissues. Anybody who's done leg day knows that the delayed onset muscle soreness they feel afterward is not something to be sad about. It actually gives you an indication that your body's recovering from some of the hard work that you did. But there are some folks, through their diet, lifestyle, or even their exercise habits, that are constantly asking their body to over-respond to damage on the inside. And therefore, the inflammatory response on the inside actually ends up tearing them down rather than building them up. How do you know if this is the case? Well, likely you'll feel sore, injured, and exhausted most of the time, and often you'll feel like something's not quite right, but you can't put your finger on it. This is a huge topic that probably requires a show series in and of itself, but my favorite quick fixes for managing inflammation is 1. Take a break and do some breath training. 2. Take some curcumin, which is the phytosone operable in turmeric that can lower your inflammatory response. 3. Consume some aloe juice, which has about the same effect on the inside as it does on the outside when you use it on sunburn. And 4. Take a nap. The body's very good at repairing itself, and sometimes requires you to do a full shutdown in order to drop the inflammatory markers. Of course, all of this presupposes that you're not eating a bunch of junk or drinking too much alcohol and caffeine, which can bring your inflammatory response out of control. An ounce of prevention, as they say, is worth a pound of cure. If you want to make yourself harder to kill, manage your inflammation. The number 13 thing you can do to make yourself harder to kill is start gratitude journaling daily. In psychological studies, gratitude journaling is one of the most surefire ways to bring yourself out of depression and out of anxiety at the same time. It seems that no matter how bad of a day you've had, or how brutal your circumstances might seem to be, if you take enough time and energy and conscious effort, you can find things that you are truly grateful for. And it turns out that pointing your mind at those things and writing them down actually creates a physiological difference in you over time. This effect is compounded if 1. You're able to write down what you're thankful for in another person and give it to them. And 2, even more so, if you can look the person in the eyes and say what it is that you're thankful for about them. The more specific and the more time and energy it takes, the better your physiological response thereafter. If you want to make yourself harder to kill, stop whining and get grateful, and then share that hard-earned gratitude around the world, and it just might change all of us. The number 14 way that we can make ourselves harder to kill is to surround yourself with people who want the best for you. Those words are actually Dr. Jordan Peterson's words from his book 12 Rules for Life, but it's a well-grounded scientific fact that if an individual can name at least 3 people in their circles who want the best for them, that they interact with regularly, then those folks are likely to be more healthy 10 years from now than individuals who report that they're in relationships with people they feel are taking advantage of them regularly. I know that this point might feel like a repeat of number 6, where I told you to invest in relationships to become harder to kill, but it's not quite the same thing. Here's an example. There's a difference between Sunday morning, calling a friend who means a lot to you, and talking through how their life's going, and sharing about how yours is going, versus going to a yoga class on Sunday afternoon and without having to talk to anybody, feeling uplifted, supported, and a part of something bigger than yourself. Investing in relationships is an important part of making yourself harder to kill, but it's not the same thing as surrounding yourself with people who want the best for you. Now, I know it sounds utopian to be surrounded by people who want the best for you at all times. I mean, we all have to drive in traffic or go to the grocery store sometime, so that's not really realistic. But intentionally creating opportunities to be around people you admire and who want to see you successful is a powerful part of becoming harder to kill. For our part, around here, we actually just started the Better Daily group in the virtual space away from social media. And in that group, we gather those who are interested in becoming 1% better every single day and who are encouraging other people to do the same. I don't know if the overall effect is the same as going to a yoga class where everybody wants to see you successful at Chaturanga, but it's definitely been a plus in my life. You can find that link in the show notes below if you're interested in connecting in a virtual place with people who want the best for you. Your last tip for becoming harder to kill, number 15, is to create space in your week. I've worked with a number of people from all walks of life who have a deep desire to become better, and while their paths of betterment all look a little different, some need more cardio in their life, some need to figure out this sleep thing, some would like to incorporate breathing exercises, or cook at home more often, or get all the crazy ideas in their head out on paper and helping the world, rather than driving them crazy. Whatever the case is, the first step in our coaching practice is always about creating the space for those things to happen. There's a really interesting verse in the Tao Te Ching that says that the usefulness of a vase is found in its ability to have space for the water and plant that it holds, and the usefulness of a house is the space between the walls to allow a family to live there. There are many things that have changed about the modern day that's different from hundreds of years ago, but one thing remains the same. You have the same 24 hours in a day that everybody has always had. The biggest difference, though, is we have a lot more things that we can fill that 24 hours with. And because of that, time, by supply and demand, is becoming more and more precious of a commodity. The stress and anxiety that so many people I talk to feel regularly, and the resulting depression after everything crashes, seems to begin with a lack of space. If you want to make yourself harder to kill, schedule a new block of space. Whether it's 5 minutes or 5 hours in your week, remember that the usefulness of a vase is in the space that it has to hold the water and plant, and the usefulness of the house is the space between the walls for a family to live in. Maybe you need more space. I guarantee you, if you're not as hard to kill as you'd like to be, you need more space. Create it and don't fill it with anything that isn't worthy to be there. I know it sounds weird, but you'll thank me later. And there you have it, 15 things you can do this week and every week thereafter to make yourself harder to kill. Thanks for listening. I hope this has been valuable to you, and I hope you'll share it with somebody in your life who you know it will benefit. This has been Alex Van Houten with Defining Dad Bod. Until next time, guys, kick butt, take names. The free, practical advice and conversations here remain unbought and unbiased thanks to the support of listeners just like you. If this episode's been helpful to you, please share it with somebody in your life who you know it will benefit. Then, subscribe to the podcast and leave us a raving review to tell others what value Defining Dad Bod has brought to your health and fitness journey. And finally, if you want more Defining Dad Bod, consider joining our online community. We send a lot of perks and resources your way, and I, Coach Alex, go live every month to talk through our listeners' health and fitness questions to make the practical science of this show applicable to everyday life. Everyone's welcome, and we'd love to have you. For more information about joining the Inner Circle or becoming a supporter of the Defining Dad Bod podcast, go to definingdadbod.com/inner circle. That's definingdadbod.com/inner circle.